This conversation begins in the book of Job, chapter 1, verses 8 through 12. Join me in the book of Job, chapter 1, verses 8 through 12. Now, we're told that Job was considered the greatest man of all the East. Job was a very wealthy, a very influential person. Verse 8 reads like this: The Lord said unto Satan, Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that fear God and avoids evil. Let's read that again. The Lord said unto Satan, God is talking to the devil, have you considered? Considered means have you thought, have you given any attention to my servant Job? The word considered, it's like God is pitting Satan against Job. God says, I got a bad boy out here. He's perfect, he's upright, he fears me, and he avoids evil. You know, you have a big brother in the family, and he's got two little brothers, and he's always pitting them against each other. He's always considering who's the strongest, who's going to win this little old battle. That's what God is saying. God says, have you considered my servant Job? My servant. Catch that part, my servant. That's possessive, my possessive. It's intimate as well. God is saying, Job is my servant. And watch this part. He calls him by his name, Job. Does God know your name? Do you have an intimate relationship with him, with your creator? He's asking Satan, have you considered my servant Job? Put your name there. You don't want to, I know, I understand. Have you considered my servant Job? God said, that Job's my boy. He said, I got somebody for you, Satan. You've been whooping all the rest of these rascals, but I got somebody for you. Watch this. There are 66 books in the Bible, and 39 are found in the Old Testament. The other 27 are in the New Testament. If you've ever read the Bible, you know that there are 4 books. I do mean 4 books that most Christians, most readers, most preachers, most teachers, most pastors, most believers prefer to just skim right through. They don't prefer to spend any time in these particular 4 books. The book of Numbers, because of all the challenging names that you have to pronounce and spell. So we prefer just to get right on past that book. The book of Daniel, because Daniel talks about politics, if you will, and about the end time prophecy. And so we don't want to hear about the end times. It's kind of a scary, spooky thing. And then there's the book of Revelation. By the way, the book of Revelation is the only book in the Bible that makes it very clear. Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the book of this prophecy. It's a blessing to those who read it and hear it. Did you hear what I just said? And keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. But it's kind of a spooky book to most of us too, because it's talking about the finale. Yeah, it's like where it's all going to end up at. And so we like to just read to Jude and just read, if you can, start back over in the New Testament. And then there's the book, of course, of Job. And the reason we don't like reading the book of Job is because of all the devastation, the calamity that Satan is allowed to bring upon Job and his family. So we like to avoid that book. But let me tell you something. The books in the Bible reminds me of a basketball game. The basketball game has 4 quarters. And so when you look at the Old Testament teachings that's in the law, if you will, that's the first quarter. And then you look at the New Testament, the birth, the death, the burial, the resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That's the second quarter. And then we're still in the New Testament. We're looking at the apostles, their teachings, and Paul is teaching. That's the third quarter. And then we come to the fourth quarter, which is that book at the end, the book of Revelations. Now, you know how it is when you're playing in a game or when you're watching a game. It's not really interesting until the fourth quarter. I mean, so if we're watching a game at the house and we're sitting there, we're probably getting our munchies and we're probably surfing the internet. We're probably flipping the TV. But when it comes down to the fourth quarter, especially the last 5 minutes, things are getting very intense. And so you're tuned in now. Nobody can touch that TV. You're dialed in because it's at the end of the game. And that's the book of Revelation. That's the book of Revelation. Well, we don't want to read it, but we want to watch the end of this basketball game because we're going to see who's going to win. So just keeping it real. The book of Revelation is a scary kind of book for most of us. I mean, when we get to it, we like to just close the book and call it a day. If we thought that the book of Revelations was challenging to read to the end, then you realize that the book of Job has been very challenging as well. Because of all the things that happened in Job and Job's family life, we think it's bad karma if we read this book. So we never get to the end of Job's story. Have you noticed? No one, I do mean no one, calls their child Job because of all the calamity that Job and his family had to face. But Job's life reflects our life as well. I mean, think about it. There's calamity that surrounds your life, you and your family. So Job's life might be just a little bit more drastic, if you will, in detail. But so is your life compared to someone else's life. We're told that Job had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And the 7 sons were having parties at their house. They were having parties, what I call back to back to back to back. They were getting lit up. One brother had a party on Monday, and then the next Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they had a party for 7 days straight. But isn't it a blessing to have a praying father, one who discerns his children and what's going on, one who can step in the gap and pray just in case one of them or all of them violated their relationship with God. Job gave a just-in-case prayer. He gave a just-in-case offering to the Lord. Yeah, you know how we said those things seen and unseen, known and unknown? Job said, I'm going to cover all the gamuts for my children. So Job deposited some prayer. He did what Thessalonians 5:17 says, pray without ceasing. And then we find ourselves in verse 9. The Bible says, and then Satan answered the Lord and said, does Job fear God for no reason? Satan said, I'll fight him. But let's be for real. I mean, does he fear you for no reason? Listen how Satan brags on Job. Verse 10. Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. Verse 11. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face. Satan said, I'll fight him. Satan said, I'll twist his arm. I'll make him curse you. Satan was telling God, let me put a little something on him. Let me put some pressure on him. Let me put some pain on him. He said, let me have him for a season. Let me see if I can make him sweat. Verse 12. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your hand. God says, bet. I got you. God, I got that bet. God, I'll cover that bet. Only against him do not stretch out your hand. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Wow, Satan is loose. You better look out for him. He upset. God provoked him. God gave Satan permission. Did you see that? You can't kill him, but take your best shot. Can God make that kind of bold, confident statement about you and I? Are we in a place where God can brag on us? That's what he's doing. He's bragging on Job. When all hell comes against you, everything seems to be going south or north or east or west, the first thing you do is blame somebody else. No. Is it possible that God is bragging on you? And then the Bible tells us, as Satan is loose, wow. The Bible tells us that a messenger comes to Job and tells him that, hey, as your sons and daughters were parting, your ox and your asses were feeding and plowing, and the Sabaeans fell upon them, and they took them away, and they killed all your servants. And as he's finishing up telling Job that news, another messenger comes and tells Job that the fire of God is fallen from heaven and burn up all your sheep and your servants as well. And while he's finishing up telling Job that news, here come another messenger as well and says the Chaldeans made out with 3 bands and fell upon your camel and carried them away, and they've slain all your servants. And while he's finishing up that message, another messenger comes as well, and he tells them that your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine at the eldest son's house, and behold, there came a great wind, a great tornado, if you will, from the wilderness, and smote them, killed them all. Wow. What calamity. What devastation. Wow. We're looking at Job and we feel like we can't relate, but we can relate. Calamity hits all of us on this journey. I remember, not quite like Job now, but I do remember when I finally was paying off these bills that I had. I finally got enough money, finally saved up enough to pay off all these bills. And I was happy. I mean, because let's be for real, it was the first time I could see myself coming out of debt. Had all these credit cards and this mortgage loan and school loans and car notes. And just as I thought I was safe, just as I thought I could look outside the door, I could bring my head above the water, I could breathe just a little bit more, just as I thought I was safe. And then I got a call that my child was sick, and I had to take my child to the doctor, and the doctor said, I got to take him to the hospital. And so, here comes another bill. I mean, I know I'm concerned about the child, but I'm just saying, here I just got myself out of debt, and here I come with this big old hospital bill. 3 days of staying in the hospital. And while I'm going through all this, I get a call saying, hey, one of my close friends had passed away. And while now I'm dealing with that, as Job is dealing with all this about his children being killed, now I'm dealing with someone calling me saying, hey, one of your other friends in a bad accident. As I'm going through all of that, then I get a call from the police saying, hey, your son has been arrested. Watch this. Then so I'm crawling back to the house. I've been beat up. I mean, I've been beat up. I'm not beat up as quite as Job was, but I've been beat up. I walk in the door and it's in the heat of the summer, and my wife said the air conditioner stopped working. I call it my Job season of calamity. We all have one. We all go through one. What's your Job season of calamity right now? I mean, Satan is loose. He's loose on all of us. I like to look at it from this perspective, though. Your situation might not be like mine, but you have one. I mean, you might have a headache today, and tomorrow you have a stomach ache, and then the day after you have a sinus problem, and then the day after you have back pain, and the day after you have knee pain. I mean, there's always something coming, and all that leads to is anxiety and paranoia and thoughts of dying. But let me tell you, it's a possibility that God has considered you. Have you ever thought about that? We want to blame the devil. Oh yeah, the devil's just attacking me. He's attacking my children. Well, hold up. Sometimes God lets him loose. He let him loose on Job. He asked, have you considered my servant Job? Is it possible God has asked Satan, have you considered my servant Sheila, my servant Herman, my servant Ann, my servant David? You see, sometimes God is in the mix. It's not always about Satan. Let me tell you this, though. Whatever you do, I do mean whatever you do, please don't curse God. Job says, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. That's what Job said. Job was saying, Lord, thanks for considering me. Wow. Lord, thank you for considering me. Now, Satan has torn up everything Job has, taken away all his possession, killed his children. And then God asked Satan again, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in all the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that fear God and avoids evil, and still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him to destroy him without cause. Satan told God, lower that hedge on Job. You got a hedge up around him. He says, boy, I know he's prayed up that hedge. See, you see what prayer does? Job is so faithful that he's prayed up, he's fasted up. He's got a hedge up around him, and it is so thick and so powerful. You see, God protects his own. He's got a hedge up around him. Satan said, lower that hedge and let me get to his flesh. God says, I'll tell you what, I'm going to lower the hedge. And you can touch his flesh, but you can't kill him. While Job was still mourning, wow, the loss of his children and his servant, Satan unleashed a bucket of pain upon his fleshly body. And that's what happens to you and I. When we think we can come out and breathe a little bit, something else slaps us in the back of the head. Something else taps us. I'm serious. Something else just comes out of nowhere. Our children definitely will bring it up on us. But something comes out of nowhere. You know, the kind of pain, the kind of issues that your family is going through right now. I mean, some of you are going through right now. Stop blaming others, though. Yeah, we start looking and trying to point fingers. Stop all that foolishness. It's a possibility that God has considered you in your family. God is bragging on you. No, it ain't always what Satan doing. The devil maybe, no, it ain't always that. Sometimes God is in the mix. He's in the detail. And then we see Job's friends coming to visit him. Eliphaz and Bildad and Zophar. They had heard about what had happened to Job. And so they came to visit him to mourn and grieve with him. And the Bible tells us that they could see Job from a distance. And when they seen him from a distance, it looked nothing like Job. The Bible tells us that these grown men, now watch this, the culture, the customs back then, you don't see men crying. The Bible tells us they wept verbally. Do you hear me? That means they were crying out loud. Job looked that bad from a distance. Whew. You know, he looked tore up right up close. It's like somebody who was 200 pounds had went down to 85 pounds in a few weeks. That's what Job looked like. Disturbed, disturbing. I mean, let's be for real. You're familiar with this look. If your child has ever been on alcohol or drugs, if you have ever been on alcohol or drugs, you know how this looks. Your child looks like a shell of themselves. You can talk to them all day long, and it's like, are they in there? It's like they're inside of their own brain. You're trying to talk to them. It's like they're trapped in a world inside their own head. And they're struggling trying to get out. You can see them, but they really can't see you. They hear you, but they really can't communicate with you the way they want to. That's how Job was. Job was tore up from the floor up. And that's how your children are. I mean, think about it. They're looking at themselves all trapped up into this drug addiction they have. And they had dreams. But life seems to fade away in front of them. As a parent, you can't physically even recognize your sons and daughters. The emotional burden that you feel, the dream that you had for them seems a lifetime ago. I mean, everything seems removed from that. Life has just stopped for a moment until you deal with this situation. You see, Satan comes in all shades. He's always looking to see what Kool-Aid you're thirsty for. That's what he's looking for. What are you lusting for this week? Satan is always looking for weakness. He's always looking for an entrance. He's looking for where there's a leak, where someone has left their child exposed. Yeah, where you haven't covered them up quite. You haven't protected them. You haven't prayed for them. He's always looking for some child that he can attack their soul. Be careful letting that be your child. Job's friend, the Bible tells us, sit on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights without speaking one word to him. Not one word. They grieved with him. Job says, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Job understood that sometimes bad things happen to good people. But what he couldn't accept was the thought that he had possibly disrespected God, that somehow he had disappointed God, that somehow he had hurt God, that somehow he had made God cry. You see how much, boy, you're talking about Job. Job's a bad man. Job was so upset that he felt that he had made God sad, that he had done something that separated him from the love of God. Job loved his family and his servants, but he loved God even more. How many of us love God so much that we mourn for the loss of his love for us, towards us? Jesus. You see, that's the kind of love Job had for God. Job was a perfect man, a man who feared God, a man who reverenced God. Job made this statement. He said, I wish I was never born. Job said, please wipe my name out of the history books of life. That's what Job said. Job thought he had done something so wrong to God. As Job said, I should have never existed. That's how much Job loved God. Do you love God that much? Have you ever loved someone so much that you'd rather see yourself sick instead of them? Have you ever loved someone so much you'd rather take their pain so that they could feel better? You would rather endure that pain yourself. Jesus knows a thing or two about pain, the pain of love, because he laid his life down for you and I, because he loved us so much. Have you ever given your heart to someone? Have you ever shared your vulnerability with someone? See, that's true love. Job's friends are just like you and I, though. They sit there, they were quiet, they were reasonable people, but they want to know what the heck took place. And so they started questioning Job. Job, what did you do? Job, what did you say? Job, what was you thinking? I mean, come on. What we see happening to you, I mean, man, you must have done something for God to turn Satan loose on you like this. They started complaining. They started making accusations that you had to do something. I don't care what no one said. You had to do something because, Job, you look terrible. Job's friends were letting him have it because something just didn't add up to them. It's like getting married and you're still hanging out with your friends and your wife is telling you, I need you to be here with me. I don't need you going out every night to the strip joints. I need you to be here with me. But you keep being hard-headed. You keep going out with your single friends. And some married friends were acting single as well. But you keep going out. And then one night you come home. One night you come home and you open up the door and you realize that, it looks like a burglar has been there. And so you're checking the house around. You see some things missing, but you don't see your stuff missing. And so then you run to the closet in the bedroom and you realize that she's gone. All of her clothes are gone. And so now you're sad. Now you're like Job. Yeah, you're mourning, you're grieving because your girl has left you. Your wife has went back home. So you call your friends up on the phone. All these guys you've been hanging out with. Watch this, watch this. So your friends are like Job's friends. They will come and they will grieve and mourn with you for a season. And then they will turn and become the interrogator. They will ask you questions like, well, what did you say? What did you do? I mean, you had to do something. They will turn on you real fast. And it's like, well, of course I did something. I was running with you guys. You see, it's important to understand that sometimes we consider ourselves because we're so selfish. No, it's not God considering you. It's you considering you. When you're married, you're married. You're no longer a single man. You no longer have a single mind. You no longer have a single thought. It's all inclusive. When you're married, you're married. And your friends, if you have real good friends, they will stop running with you because they understand how important the union of marriage is. Job's friends understood how important it was that they go and mourn with him. They'd go and sup with him, grieve with him. But also how important it was that they buffeted him by speaking to him and trying to ask him what took place. And that's what we all do. We're all curious. And so they asked him, they made sure that, hey, Job, did you do something? Was something wrong? What did you do? That's what your friends will do when they come back. And they'll try to make you the victim for a moment, but then they'll interrogate you for a lifetime. Be careful running with your boys. And your boys are single and trying to mingle. You should be at home with your wife. Yes. And you're not single. And you're not single-minded anymore. You're married. Yeah. I was married now. Yeah. You married. Stay with your boo. Yeah. That's your union now. That's your partner. That's your ride or die chick. That's her. Your wife. Because you haven't been considered when you're considering yourself. It's just a selfish act of stepping out, staying out, leaving her at home by herself. That's selfishness. That's what that is. That's considerness of you being selfish. No, God's going to consider you, and you need to be prepared. You and your marriage need to be strong. You see, she walked away. She packed her bags and she headed back home because at that point she felt single all by herself. And you put in that position. I pray that you learn there's a time, there's a season where your friends have to fade and your spouse have to be embraced. This is your season to embrace some things. This is your season to let some things go. There's a difference. You're still my friends, but you're my friends from a distance. This is my boo now. This is my girl. This is my ride or die chick. This is what I'm into it for, the long haul. I said I do, which means I considered her and she considered me. Yes, that's what we have to have in our marriages. If it can happen to Job, and he's perfect, he's upright, he fears God, he avoids evil. If it can happen to Job, wow, what can happen to us? Start looking at your situation from a different point of view. And stop beating yourself up over something you think you did wrong, or that you think your children did wrong because things are just not going your way. Start looking at it from a different perspective, that it might be that God has considered you, that God just might be bragging on you. As far as we know, Job only had one weakness, and he stated it. He says, for the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me. That which I was afraid of is come unto me. You see, Job feared and was afraid that his family and his wealth, his livestock, his servants, his employees, his possessions, his means of making a living, and more importantly, his God would be taken away from him. That's what he feared. He feared that God would be taken away from him. Now, if that can happen to Job, just think about you and I. We know that Job was perfect. He was upright. He feared God and he avoided evil. How do you and I measure up to that? Now, we know we can't be perfect, but we should be trying. We can be upright and we should be trying. Now, I know most of you said, but Donnie, I fear God, but let's be for real. Hold up. I think we respect God, but I don't really think that most of you fear God, not like we should. And we certainly don't avoid evil. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of us like flirting with the dark side. You see, we got like 3 strikes against us. We can do better. We need to do better. When the Lord asked Satan if he had considered his servant Job, I'm telling you, God was just simply bragging on Job. The Lord was saying in so many words to Satan that Job was more loyal to him as a servant than Satan ever was. The Lord was implying that Job was made lower than the angels. Well, watch this. But Job still served God and honored God as if he were on their level. That's what we should be. Blessed be the name of the Lord. He giveth and he taketh away. But blessed be his name. Satan realized he had met his match with Job. Does he realize that with you? Do you have some Job spirit inside of you? Because at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to make the right decision. You alone are accountable for you. And no matter how much everybody else pours into you, you have to be man enough, woman enough to turn the faucet off and stop the water from running, because it's time for you to make the decision that's best for you and your family. Sometimes God is just bragging on you, and sometimes God has considered you. Stay your course. You're being considered for being one of a few who's living close to perfect as you can, who's living an upright life, who fear God and avoids evil. And then we have Apostle Paul in the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 12, around verse 7. Paul is sharing with us that he's human just like us. And if he don't check himself, he'll wreck himself as well. Paul is sharing with us that he needs something to keep him from being so prideful, to keep him from being so big-headed, if you will, just like us. So Paul says, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, yes, high-minded, yes, full of himself. He says, I was given a thorn in my flesh. I was given some pain to check me from time to time. A messenger of Satan to torment me. Wow. Paul was powerful. 3 times he says, I prayed, I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. Paul says, get this, remove this from me. You know, somebody's got your arm twisted behind your back, and you say, okay, uncle, please take this away from me. How many times have you asked God to remove some pain in your life? Your husband, maybe, your children, your wife, your enemies. How many times have you told God to move this sickness away from you? But God makes this statement, but he said to me, Paul says, my grace is sufficient for you. God says, I got you. For my power is made perfect in weakness. God says, I need you to lower yourself so that I can stand up inside of you. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness. Paul said, I'm going to boast about my weakness. I want you to stand up inside of me so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness. Paul says, I delight in weakness. I delight in insults. I delight in hardships. Paul says, I delight in persecution. I delight in difficulties. Are you delighting in your pain? Are you delighting in your weakness? For when I am weak, then I am strong. That's what this message is telling us. That when we are weak, we are really strong. Because at that time, that's when God is letting things happen. See, things don't happen unless God allows it to happen. Paul says, I know it's coming from the Lord. Paul says, I didn't call myself. He called me, so therefore, guess what? He will take care of me. But be careful considering yourself. That's where your pride comes in. Paul says, I'm not considering myself. I thought about it because I'm human like you, but Paul says, I kind of stepped to the side. I allowed God to consider me. Yeah, he knows best. If I consider myself, that's being selfish. Paul says, he gave me some pain in my body to make me see, to make me understand that he is always in control, not me, myself. And then as we conclude in the book of Job, chapter 42, verses 10 through 17, the Bible tells us, and the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. God changed things around when Job considered his friends and he prayed for them. Are you considering someone besides yourself this morning? Who are you praying for besides you and yours? Then we're told that his family, his sibling, his brothers and sisters, and some of his friends came to him, and watch this, and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. Let me read that again. And comforted him over all the evil that Satan had brought upon him. No. It didn't say that. It says, and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. You see, God will consider you sometimes. He's bragging on you. You just have to stay the course. Yeah. He allowed Satan to inflict pain, hardship upon Job, but God allowed it. God allowed that to take place. And then we're told that, so the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning. God blessed him, gave him double for his trouble. Now you're thinking, but Donnie, his family is gone. They destroyed his whole family. Yes. You're looking at these 70 plus years we have on this earth. God is looking at eternity. God can give you a family. God gave you the family you had. Job loved God so much that he realized one thing: the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh. God considered Job. God is considering you right now. All that you're going through right now is because God is considering you. So what are you saying? What is the moral of the story? Well, life happens. It's not always Satan. Sometimes it's God. It's that God has considered you. More importantly, God is bragging on you. Don't forget Romans 10 and 9. Confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, and you too shall be saved. Yes, you have been considered because God is bragging about you. Be blessed.